Hello, you're listening to the Layers podcast. I'm your host, Tayo, and I'm so excited to have you join us on the conversation today. All we're doing is exploring the many layers of our world and discovering the diversity of voices and stories that exist within it. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and that it adds new and colorful layers to your life. Hello and welcome back to the Layers podcast. I'm your host, Tayo, as always, and I'm so happy to be back. First recording of 2024. I'm here with my really wonderful friend, Sydney Scott Sam, who is the co-founder of Workspace Global and the founder of Openspace Global. And their job is to help people see clearly, put African entrepreneurs into the right spaces, encourage them and kind of show them the way when it comes to branding, just elevating their business. Yes. He is also a Forbes 30 under 30, 2019. He doesn't like this, but we'll talk about that. Sydney is a big deal. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Taya. This is long overdue. I'm very honored to be here. I remember we spoke about this, I don't know, probably a year ago. Yeah. More than a year, yeah. And finally.
We did it eventually. Better late than never. It's not even late. It's just right time.
It's the right time. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. I'm excited. So our conversation today, we're just going to talk about entrepreneurship, which is like, it's very dear to you. Mm-hmm. And recent fatherhood. We're just going to talk about the kind of like the emotional and mental self-development that you've been able to journey through.
I think that's a really important topic. And what I'm hoping out of this podcast is that a lot of people can see themselves in this, whether you're a man or you're not, right? Like, you know, when you enter a space of settling down and serving, and I call it serving because it is the service to a spouse or to your son or daughter. It as much preparation as you can put in, you're not prepared for what it comes with. And just the genuine perspective of having to deal with that whilst pursuing a dream is also not something that people talk about. People talk about work and family and work-life balance. You know, like there's a lot of that. But we want to talk about this from the point of ambition, where there's a really huge thing that you're pursuing, and you know that is actually your first baby. So what happens when you have a real baby and those two babies are fighting against each other, if you get what I mean? So, yeah.
Wow, I'm really looking forward to it. So let's talk a bit about your background, I guess, for audiences or listeners who might be tuning in that may not know your background. So I know you went to school and business school in Ghana.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so you like to start at high school.
Yes, I always like to. How do you know that? I like to start at high school. So I'm a Ghanaian entrepreneur. I am 30 years old, going on to 31 in a couple of weeks. So I'm old, and I started. I see my story starting from high school. I'm born to two very humble Ghanaian parents. You know, one very strict and one a big lover of life. We're Christian. So that would come through a lot in the context of this podcast. And we were raised in a very, strong, stable, principled environment, but with lots of high expectations and ambitions. And so I went to a school called Achimota School. It's a big debate if you ask any Ghanaian on what the best schools are, but but we can kick up there. So I went to Achimota School and then went to University of Ghana, did my undergrad, which is where I started my first business, which was called a creative arts platform. It was basically a concert that moved from campus to campus across Ghana, which was spoken word, live music, and stand-up comedy. We had about 14 concerts, and I'm very proud of. It was kind of the bedrock for some of the world's global artists. You've heard of Mr. Easy, you've heard of Kiddy. And those people, you know, came through. Well, I wouldn't say it contributed to the entire career, but then that was one of the stages that, you know, it's part of the stepping stones. Yeah. That business failed terribly. So it did well in terms of we built a cult following. Like if we said we were coming back today, 1,000 people would show up. So that's how good it was. But financially, we had no clue what we were doing. Like it was just a fiasco. So that kind of defines my my undergrad experience. It was fantastic for my career.
So what were you studying actually?
Human resource management in the business school, right? But I know I kicked up that business as a rebellion to the traditional route that everybody goes through. My dad was expecting me to be an economist, or eventually it evolved into me going into oil. I just boycotted the whole dream.
It's just spiraling now.
Honestly, and I mean, just for context, I mean, my brothers are, both multi-Ivy League kids who are doing very well at top, firms in the US. They're doing well, right? Yeah. So when you contrast it to my story, I'm also doing very well, but it was a very different route, in relation to that. So that first business in my undergrad, that was it. And I did my master's at University of Ghana, and then I've done stints of education around the world. So some in the US. I don't want to mention what institutions, and then just in other, because I realized
that's talking about LinkedIn.
I know, but
I know that, but I don't want
it takes a lot of the shine away from the education that I got in Ghana. And I want to say my education in Ghana, as dodgy as it could be, was a huge foundation to who I am today. And I always want to give credit to where credit is due. So yeah, that's a bit about my background. Jumped into entrepreneurship straight out the bat. So after the first business failed, I jumped into freelancing, which was which was born out of the fact that the first business failed for specific reasons. We didn't know how to position our brand properly for corporate partnerships. We didn't really understand. We didn't have guidance as to how to run businesses, right? And that's what led me to kicking off the company that I run now, even though it's fundamentally different, where it's supporting businesses and startups around the world, starting in Africa with branding and design, but specifically also supporting them with guidance in relation to how to run a business. So those two things kind of came together really nicely to create a really unique product. And then after some years, we launched a nonprofit. So the nonprofit is from Workspace, which is called Openspace, because we realized that we were always talking about business and career, but nobody was teaching our clients about their mindset, about how they perceive social issues, about their interpersonal skills, So we then thought to launch this nonprofit to create a space where people can have open conversations, but to help them with mindset transformation. And that's kind of been my journey, going. I got married and then had a baby, and here we are today. So, yeah.
I love that. So when you talk about creating that space where people, essentially creating open space, why was that really important for you to do? At what point did this come up?
So it's quite interesting. We had a lot of toxic clients. From Workspace, we had a lot of toxic, and they didn't know they were toxic. I mean, we didn't even know what toxic clients meant, right? So we just recognized that there was a lot of people who had severe ego issues, traumatic issues that were contributing to their business decisions. They were terrible leaders. There was a lot of strife with people who had a lot of potential, right? And to be honest, them being toxic was also bad for business, because we had to get to a space where we started firing our clients, right? Because they didn't. One of our early events was clients from hell. That was one of them. Workspace, as I said, Workspace is the branding company. I'll tell you what it is today. It's now a tech company using AI and technology to power design for brands around the world, but also creating thousands of jobs for African designers, African creators. So we'll talk about it in a bit. But yeah, it was bad for business because our clients' mindsets at some points were just terrible. And we're like, no, we need to do something about this. Otherwise, we will always have, it's a very short lifetime journey where they come in for 3 months, do a couple of things, and you get really close to them when you are working with them. And you just start to notice, these people don't have boundaries, there's a God complex as well. Sometimes when people are paying you, they feel like they own you as well, especially in Africa.
I was just about to say that,
So, and again, I don't fault anyone. I myself had my fair share of issues back in the day, So we launched Openspace as a way to support them, to support people who had potential, who didn't have anybody taking care of their mindsets, right? It's evolved into something much bigger now, because now it's both for entrepreneurs and professionals, right? Previously, it was mainly focused on entrepreneurs. And now we tackle a lot of issues. So it's more about open conversation versus the mindset transformation. But the mindset transformation happens underneath, but people just come because you hear people's hard, raw opinions, from intellectuals. So it's not just banter. It's like very thought-provoking conversation, but it's very, very raw. It gets messy. People get pissed off. People cry. Like, it's fantastic. And it's, I like that. 60 to 80 people in a room, all talking at each other. It's really cool. So, yeah.
I actually have funny enough, as I was prepping for this interview, I was thinking about, just based on what you said now, it was a quote from The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. And it goes, "Love is never any better than the lover. Wicked people love wickedly. Violent people love violently. Weak people love weakly. Stupid people love stupidly."
Wow.
And I'm like, broken people entrepreneur brokenly. Yeah. That's it. That's what I'm getting from that.
It's the truth. And let me probably build a bit of foundation here, right? I believe that entrepreneurs are the army of change makers that the world needs and the world deserves, where they're intrinsically motivated. They would do this even if they fail 10 times, right? They are not necessarily skewed by government policy or they're fairly independent, but altogether they create grassroots change and macro level change as well, especially in Africa. So that's why I'm very passionate about, the entrepreneurs that we're creating, right? And with Workspace, when we were pivoting, we pivoted in about 2021 to becoming a tech company. We realized that, even working with clients, the traditional agency model requires you to work with more and more expensive people for your time, right? And that was taking us away from the impact that we're trying to make, which was we're more revenue driven versus impact driven. And but being impact driven doesn't mean you'll be financially sustainable. So we had to sit down and have an honest conversation with ourselves and say, what the hell are we doing? Like, how are we going to do this, right? So that's when we were like, let's flip the whole thing on its head. Let's use technology to remove all the majority of the human elements to it, but keeping it in a way that still allowed people to feel very close to us. And moving it away from hiring 13 people. Our agency was about 30 people at the time, in this huge house, and there was a whole thing. It was really thriving, to be honest. But we were like moving from 30 to hiring 5,000 people. How's that going to work? How do you get what I mean? Because our goal is we're trying to employ about 1 million people over the next 20-25 years.
Very old.
But yes. So, but the idea is that how do you move from 30 to 5,000? How's that going to work? So we needed to create a platform that, allowed for that interface, right? Where project management, customer management, financial management, all of that happens there, both on the client side and on the creative side as well, right? So on the client side, any entrepreneur can get up today with an idea. Even if you're sitting on your toilet at home, you can request a website, from there. You don't need a proposal. You don't need anything. Just start, if you get what I mean. And you're not doing it yourself. Someone will do it. So that's a beautiful thing. It's not an Upwork where you have to go and find the person and you have to go and negotiate and talk, and you don't have to do all of that. Workspace still does all of that for you. So all you do is put your idea in and pay, and we will take it up, manage the whole process, hire someone on the other side, who's already vetted, make sure that they deliver it. If it's 3 days, it's 3 days. We'll do all of that stuff, but at scale, right? So that's just generally setting the foundation for our belief in entrepreneurs, right? And then Openspace as well, is supporting on the other end, which is supporting mindsets, creating better leaders, creating more ethical professionals as well in the workspace, and putting these two together. I think, the people that we are supporting can do anything in the world.
I want to talk about Openspace. in a little bit, but when it comes to Workspace, what's the one thing that you find when people come with either their ideas or business proposals or just branding in general? What's the one thing that you're like, this is a common theme that I find with entrepreneurs when they come to us that maybe people are not aware of, or they themselves are not aware of?
People are a little, I want to use the word deluded, but don't, it's too strong. People fantasize about becoming an entrepreneur. Now they've even moved the word away from entrepreneur to founder, right? Like people fantasize about that. And so they have an idea. They've seen a lot of great stories, and they have that innate drive to do that. But a lot of people don't really quite know how big a problem they are looking to solve. And when I say that, I don't even mean externally. I mean internally. In terms of their capacity to be able to solve that, not even skills-wise, just, as a personality, your upbringing, your trauma, like people have no clue. So everyone gets up, or a lot of people get up feeling like they're fully equipped to become a founder when they've come up with the idea. Which is true. I mean, everyone can be a founder, right? But I just think people really underestimate the amount of work that needs to be done intrinsically and extrinsically when they come up with these ideas.
This reminded me of a guest we had on the podcast. She was talking about motherhood, and she was like, there's a reason why the day you find out you're pregnant is not the day you become a mom. So that you need that prep for 9 months. So you're right, that you just wake up with the idea of, I'm a founder, I'm an entrepreneur, and then it's like, but what now? How did you get to that? How'd you get to that point? Like, was there something within yourself that you're like, oh, these are my own delusions or misconceptions? Why do I keep knocking everything around? My own delusions or misconceptions on my capacity as an entrepreneur. What was that like for you?
It's been a very slow journey. And Ty, I don't know, like people like us, for some reason, we're able to help people better than we're able to help ourselves. So the help I'm able to offer somebody in 1 hour, it took me 5 years to be able to navigate that. Yeah. So I'm telling you.
This is making me feel better internally.
So for me, lots of failing, lots of winning. And probably, I know you wanted to talk about the Forbes thing, but I think hiring people and my interactions with people. So just for a bit of context, I went into high school when I was the age of 12. I know in Nigeria, it's probably not that exciting, but in Ghana, everybody goes in at the age.
No, it's not that exciting.
Yeah. But then, like, I know, but
the 12,
yeah. But everybody in Ghana, you go to high school at the age of 15. Okay. So I was 3 years younger than everyone. So I had a very tumultuous time, in senior high school, right? So I had a chip on my shoulder. I had a point to prove, right? And because I didn't have the basics, like, good looks. I think I'm very handsome now.
You are. So I was like, okay.
Like, I didn't feel like I was a very good looking person. I didn't feel like, so there was a lot that I was compensating for through business. Do you know what I mean? Showing my competences. Yeah. And also, my dad had high expectations of me. I didn't want to let him down, but I didn't want to do it the way he wanted me to do it. So the fact that I was going rogue, but low-key, I really wanted him to be proud of me one day as well, right? So those two things combined, that validation, right? So through my entrepreneurial journey, when I was hiring people, when I was getting awards, when I was getting clients, there was a lot of toxic things that were happening. And the beautiful thing is that they all manifested in financial loss. So that's a language I understand. That's a language
everybody understands.
Exactly, So I could clearly see, not doing the emotional work on this thing literally would cost you financially, or cost you a business relationship, or cost you, one of those things, right? And then on the flip side, my successes also brought out some very terrible parts of me as well. So I remember when I got on the Forbes list, which is one of the most beautiful things that's ever happened to me, but also it brought a lot of things to light. That, when I'm celebrated and when I'm it really got to my head, right? I feign humble, right? But low key, I think now I'm on a good journey towards humility, you know, but like I feigned humble. I was very, very, very proud and very, felt very entitled. I was, you know, and I think I'm quite an intelligent person as well. So I used that during the time to, I wouldn't call it manipulate, but like, you know, just get the most out of people and relationships in a way that was not healthy, if you get what I mean, right? And and I was out and about. I was, you know, I was just all over the place, and it was good. It was good to see it. I always say everybody deserves to be rich, so you can see who you really are. Do you get what I mean? Like, so in that year, like I was really exposed to the full, because sometimes your lack of finances will limit certain things in your life, and you wouldn't explore certain things. But when you have that, and you have the fame, and you have everything, it really comes out. So those are the key milestones and things that really exposed me to some of the things. And then I met my partner, who's now my wife, right? Who we've been together for, I think, about 6 or 7 years, probably 6 or 7 years. And we married 3 years, going on 4 years this year. And she was the one person who was not impressed, or literally nothing meant anything to her. She was like, yeah, I'm just here for you. So if you don't show up properly, like, you know, and I don't know, there was something about her that I was like, I need this woman. I wanted to do right by her so much. So my quest for her appreciation also really changed me in relation to being more human at work, being, and you know, what does integrity actually mean? I don't think I was a person of integrity, to be honest. I think I was a person where ethics were convenient. So I wouldn't do anything wrong, but the reasoning behind why I do it is not because it's right.
The opportunity just hasn't
exactly, you know, or sometimes it's a play. It's a play because, like, you know, you're always playing a game. So you show that you're ethical now, so that in 2 years, when somebody is speaking about you, they can say that you get it's a play. You know? So I don't think it came from a place of real integrity, right? But she really challenged me to do that work, which is, you know, you're a person of principle, like you're a person of integrity, like are you a person who generally cares about your staff? Are you somebody who will turn away from a large sum of money because of your principles? You know, what do you do at home? Like those things, right? And I think that has also been like the master's degree in relation to that mindset and growth for me along my entrepreneurial journey. Yeah.
What was that like for you, internally processing, this is who I want to appear to be, but this is actually who I am? How do you navigate the conflict? Because I think that sometimes we picture ourselves being this, you know.
Question. So if I'm being entirely truthful, culturally in Ghana, I feel like you are raised and trained to be a convenient person of principle with an underlying quest for wealth and fame, right? Yeah. So, you know, in the African culture, most people say the African culture is a lot more, it's more conservative, and, you know, it is, right? But there's a lot of toxic undertones there where, you know, you know, where people do things because they don't want to disgrace your family. Yeah. And, you know, you know, there's a lot of the principles or the why behind a lot of things are so warped. Yeah. So do you want to say something?
No,
they're so warped, you know. So for me, that conflict, I didn't even have the conflict until recently. I was actually, so my conscience was actually okay with being an ethical person of convenience, like for the longest time, because it makes sense.
We don't see many examples where that's not the case. Yeah. There are very few and far between where this person is actually just integral, because as a matter of principle, this is not their belief.
Exactly, right? You know, but for a lot of us, we're faking it till we make it, till we get to that point where genuinely within our heart, we will walk away from $1 million because when nobody is looking, because it is the right thing to do. It's you're not there yet, so you don't really know, you know. So that conflict really started, as I said, more recently when I met my partner, And to be honest, I mean, even the worst one was, I mean, when I turned 30 last year, where we had lunch, and she was like, listen, you've been saying you've been working at being a person of principle. You're 30 now, just be it. Honestly, that advice just both ruined my life and has made things, you know, she's like, just be it. Stop working at
some of this for me. Just
exactly,
be for real
just
right
be
now.
it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and so that's when I feel like the conflict really started. Like, you know,
Wow.
yeah, and
Not even when you recognize the issue, just
yeah, because even with that, I had an extrinsic motivation and pressure because there was a woman I wanted to be with.
Yeah.
So it wasn't necessarily, I mean, it was coming from within, but it was based on external pressures. Not pressures, but like external motivation. Yeah. But now I care what I think when nobody is with me. I really care about it. I ask myself, you know, especially also it's now I also feel like I'm really doing the work as a Christian. Previously, I was a Christian out of, you know, method, out of tradition, like, you know, and not in a bad way, but like, you know, but now like I'm doing the work. Like there's a friend of mine, a guy called Emmanuel, that we consulted together for some time, but now we're building a friendship with our families, etc. And he spoke about something called the affection for God.
Okay.
I was like, I don't have that. Like that deep love, oh God, like I want to hear from you today. I want to real affection. I didn't have that. I don't even have it now. I'm working towards it. You get what I mean? Like, yeah. So that's kind of where, that's what the conflict means to me, right? And in some cases, I'll just speak on the other side, it's very inconvenient. So I'm still able to take the very hard decisions for my family when I'm like, yeah, I'm willing to be the bad guy to protect us, right? And I'm happy I have that training where it's like, you know, if there's a situation that doesn't suit us, I'll give you an example. My wife and I were having we call it a debate. We don't really, we argue, but it's always fairly civil, right? Where I told her that I place my culture above her. And
wait, what does that mean?
Yes. So for example, I wouldn't say I don't, but for the purposes of that conversation, I needed her to understand that there are higher powers at play when it comes to being a member of a Ghanaian society, because she's Ghanaian, but she was born and raised in London, right? You know, so she doesn't really like, you know, we were talking basically about the idea that when our son was born, she was in a very tough space postpartum, mentally, physically. Like there was a lot that was going on, and we can use this as a segue into fatherhood. And culturally, you do your baby's naming ceremony at within a specific time frame, right? And I had always wanted to have a bit like a naming ceremony. Like, I mean, like for some reason, again, it could be that validation thing, but like I'm Ghanaian through and through. I like fufu. I like kinke. Like, you know, you can take me to have all the tagliatelle and all the stuff around the world, but I always come back to my core, right? So I really like being Ghanaian. And so having a naming ceremony following in the specific traditions was important to me. And she was like, yeah. And throughout the whole way I was going about it, it was like, whether she was ready to have it or not, it was happening, which is the truth. You know, like, yeah, I like legitimately, like the naming ceremony is supposed to happen within a number of weeks or a number of days after the child is born. Whether we are emotionally ready, we are not. Whether you follow the tradition, I think.
Because Nigeria is 8 days.
It's 8. I think it's 8 days. But then
everyone will find. I knew Europe was 8 days.
Yeah. But I think you can adjust it because I think our son was he had jaundice, so like there was a few, you know, but it had to be as soon as possible. You have to outdoor the child. You're not even supposed to call the person your baby by their name openly until you name them, like stuff like that. Okay. So so the conversation was a very tough conversation, obviously, because she was like, I cannot understand how, like, you know, basically if she wasn't there, that was the whole argument. If she wasn't there or she didn't want to be there, it would still go ahead, right? And I was like, I can understand why you're upset about this, but if you understand how large a force we're fighting against, of like going against the grain and going against tradition, for some of the things, we have to pick our battles. And I'm happy to be somebody who is not like, let's say, this probably is not the right thing to do, but it is the proper thing to do in this time, despite the principles. I will do it, like, and just make sure that, we're going to be upset at home and we'll work through that whole thing. But just to make sure that we're not ostracized, we're not, because, in the Western world, it's okay to be an individual. Just as an individual, I don't think that is beneficial to us, in relation to that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, but I feel like I'm going on and on. So let me stop for a second. Yeah.
No, when you said being an individual, it's so funny because when I was prepping for this, there were so many different places that my mind was going through, and I had like a whole spider graph. And it's funny that we're hitting all these different spots even without going. But I was thinking about individualism, and not necessarily in this context. I was thinking of it more so as an entrepreneur in terms of like this conflict between I'm an entrepreneur and I want to kind of take and receive and have revenue and have growth, but I don't understand that it's not my individualistic goal, because you have a company filled with people. And if you can't serve those people, like you can't, even to know yourself as an individual, you need people. I think sometimes living in the Western world, at least coming from Nigeria, I feel like I'm in constant internal conflict between individualism and the fact that we're a lot more communal.
Yes.
And things, it's not just African cultures, other cultures are very communal. So things aren't things aren't as standalone as they are here.
Yes.
Like people can be like, I don't want to use this example because I feel like I might need too much clarification. But I think, people are much more happy to be like, from everyone else, I'm just going to do me without realizing that you're actually connected. And I think there's a resentment that people feel, that they feel like anything I don't want to have to give to the people around me, family, work, friends, anything I don't want to give, I'm annoyed that it's required of me.
Yeah.
I think there's a resentment for that.
There is. Yeah.
Which, anyways.
Yeah, no, but you're hitting it, and this is good to bring us back to the conversation about.
Which we're not bombing on Sydney's wife, by the way.
No.
I feel like some people might be like, but she didn't want it. Like, we're not. That's not what we're talking about. Yeah.
To be honest, and I think it was an important. Like, I interestingly enough, I stand by her.
Yeah.
Like, she is right for saying that, based on the hierarchy of people in your life, you do what is right by your partner and your immediate family first. She's right.
Yeah.
But my point is that, when as you're picking battles in your life, right? Like, the timing of certain things, like, for example, when I was married, I didn't get the same reverence and respect from my extended family as now that I'm a father. It is so interesting. Yeah.
Oh my God, someone said this to me.
It's so interesting. It's so interesting that, like, so when I was single, let's say single, even though I was dating, useless cry, like, just forget about it. Then when you get married, there's some consideration, but then it's when you become a father that like there's grades to it, if you get what I mean. Anyway, so bringing that back in the whole idea of like, firstly being a person of integrity, being able to be the bad guy to protect my people, then dealing with this whole communal, talking about the communal battle versus individual battle, bringing that all the way back to entrepreneurship. I'll be honest, neither is perfect. So you should be an entrepreneur for personal financial gain, personal gain in terms of fulfillment and financial gain. It is important. It is what is most sustainable. Because a lot of people start businesses and they miss that element, and after a few years or a few tries, even though they've made an amazing amount of impact, it dies off, right? And the impact dies with them because that part is missing. But also, if you do that in isolation without the communal, the greater good, the need for impacting the world, the need for your responsibility towards, your employees, again, there's a problem. So you need a balance of both, and that's just generally what you need to find in relation to that. I will use this as a kind of a starting point to kick off my relationship and my conflict between fatherhood and entrepreneurship. So, to be honest, I think I'm a minimalist. I can live on very little. but also I won't say I like the good life. I mean, I'm very committed to living outside the rat race. So I want to be cut off from the national grid in relation to energy. I want to have a fully, solar, live in a solar building, create our own water, create our own food, have passive income that can pay for our bills. Like there's a certain way that I want to live in a bubble out, because I feel like, I don't even just want to say, but like the devil gets through the official pressures of like capitalism and economies and things like that. So that's important to me as well. Now I have a family and I have to take care of them. And like it is my biblical responsibility to disciple my wife and disciple my family, but also to care for them and protect them, right? To be the prophet, priest, and king. And that has changed my motivation for what I do with business, so now like, people, I go like, I want to build $1 billion company, and that's what I'm doing no matter how long it takes. And people go like, why? You don't really need that. And I'm like, well, when I think about it, that is the one key way that I can build some really good passive income doing what I love, right? So it's really, the balance of the two has really fixed and shaped up my motivation for being an entrepreneur. I want to change the world, but I need to take care of my family. And therefore, my business needs to be financially sustainable, needs to be ethical, but also needs to be as high impact and as scalable as possible, which led me into technology. So you can see how like having a child and has now led to better business decisions, better ways to think of strategy. I chose to become an employee. I have been an entrepreneur my whole life. And 3 years ago, I was like, let me go consult for an organization. I'm currently SAN Technologies, but that was ALX Africa and The Room, and they have a few brands. And most people don't know this, but that was my first ever job. That's the first job I've ever had. But it was a job in a director position as a director of marketing, and I really loved it. Right, like
first job was a director.
As a director, yes, exactly. So God has an amazing way of doing things.
Okay.
So I did a 2-year contract with them. But just to say, so like I'm, put my pride aside. I said I'll never work for anybody ever in my life. But I was like, Firstly, you need to go and understand what it means to work and serve under somebody else.
Yeah.
Understand what it means to be an employee. Understand what it means to run a global company, run a company, like things like that. So I learned all of those things as well from there. But that came from fixing my motivations because of being a father and being a husband, I would say. But it has been tough. It started out when we got married, and I remember we had a very tough early. I mean, I always say marriage is hard work. People just say marriage is hard. Marriage is not just hard; it's hard work. But it is the most fulfilling thing you'd ever do in your life. Because I say I have a great marriage. Last year I had a good marriage because we had we struggled during the pregnancy and having a baby and like postpartum. Like it was a lot, and my coping mechanisms came in. My wife needed me in a way that I just could not be, because I cannot be a father to this child and be like to the darling husband that I imagine. And I was doing 150%. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, in terms of like taking control of like, the home and changing my son's diapers, and and my son had colic, so he would wake up every 2 hours, even and not just wake up and just be awake, like cry, like in despair. You get it? And my wife was still dealing with like postpartum, like on the verge of some levels of depression. Motherhood was hard. Her body had not, it's a lot. Her hormones were all over the place.
Women say that it takes them at least 2 years
to be back to normal. It's crazy. It's crazy. Like, I mean, to be honest, hats off. Like, I would buy that woman anything because, like, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And she was a soldier through it all, right? But there was only so much that she could give, and so I had to step in relation. I died to myself. I honestly. I was telling our friend Oyenda, who also just recently joined us.
People's come.
That I felt like, nobody tells you about what being a husband to a mother is. even people talk about being a husband, which in itself is its own thing. But being a husband to a mother requires a very different set of skills, right? That's before being a father, right?
I haven't heard this line of thinking.
Yeah. So being a husband to a mother, we're at the 1 hour mark. Should we keep going?
Yeah.
Cool. Sweet. Okay, cool. So being a husband to a mother was something else, and like my coping mechanism for that was show up in every way that you can at home, but home is not giving you anything right now, so pour yourself into work. So that's literally, so I was a shell at home, but delivering, like, you know, I was there emotionally. I would speak to, like I was there for my son. I was this thing, but I was a shell. And then I would put everything that, like, you know, it's like, you know, just doing work and just to cope, just to be sane. And then, unfortunately, my wife also noticed it, like that, like, legit, like, there's no, like, you don't laugh.
She said you're doing this with your chest.
Yeah, exactly. You don't laugh. You don't like, you're not soft. You get it?
Picture.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
You're not soft. You're not like, you know, you're not, yeah, you're like, you know, like, what do they say? Loosen your shoulders, or like, there's something that people say, you're not soft, right? So,
relax your shoulders.
Yeah, relax your shoulders. Yeah. Like, you know, and so it was heavy.
You know, and laugh.
Yeah.
I can just imagine the tension, like that.
Yeah. You know, it was hard, and it was hard for her, and it was hard for me, and it was even hard for, like, you know, like the people at work. You know, I was still working, so I had a job, running my 2 businesses, being a father, and trying to be an amazing husband. Like, those are the things, like, you know, and if you're committed to all these things, it will break you. Like, it's not a joke. So sometimes you have to, again, pick your battles, you know. So sometimes I do really believe that you have to accept that you will not make as much money or do as much commercially when you're prioritizing your family. It's just what it is.
This is interesting. So, because you said something a bit earlier on where you said you were pouring into the home, but the home wasn't giving.
The home wasn't giving, it wasn't.
Because it's a very revenue mindset in a way to look at it.
Yeah.
So when you say it wasn't giving, what was you're looking back now and being like, oh, that wasn't you. In what way would you say?
So Abba is my best friend. So like when we talk, she fills me up. It fills me up. Like, you know, there's a lot of fulfillment there. You know, where we go on date night every Thursday. You know, there's things that we do at home. Like, you know, praying together. Like, you know, there's a fulfillment in the labor of trying to get better. So it gives to me as well, if you get what I mean. But for some reason, you know, when you want to cope, you put on an armor, you put on, like, you're ready for battle. And sometimes, even if there's something that could give, it just hits on your armor and falls off. So that's generally what was happening, right? I'd become to be able to serve in the way that I needed, I had to switch my mindset to be like at this stage, I can't expect much. And I thought I was doing that from the right place, right? But then it also meant I realized I need more, but I'm not gonna get it. So it's like, just do what you need to do and just keep going, you know. So that's kind of the relationship that came from,
like, just a sense of duty, but it's
just a sense of duty, right? Like, you know, from that perspective. But the beautiful thing is, and we'll talk about my son in a little bit, is that it's made me a better entrepreneur. One thing I did not recognize, and for every entrepreneur listening to this, is that very often you're one of the biggest problems in your company.
Oh my God, this is so true.
You just don't see it. And usually, unfortunately, because you are the one who started the company, the culture revolves around tolerating your toxicity, right? And when I say toxicity, I don't even mean it in an overt way. So, for example, I'm a designer. At a point, I feel like I was one of the top 10 best graphic designers in Ghana, right? I don't really like design anymore, but, like, I'm a designer. I design really quickly, very well, and I design from a business person's perspective. So it solves problems very quickly. I'm not an artist in the sense of creating art for it to be appreciated. I design to solve problems. So for the longest time, I was the best designer in my company. And so when things weren't going well, I'll just step in and design the thing myself, skip all the processes, all the quality, all the things that we've set up to be able to do that. And what I realized over time is that I therefore did not invest in creating that skill in the organization. That skill only sat in me. And when I wasn't there, I was then a bottleneck, right? Like, or in some cases, you get it. So I would set the business back because I was like the person holding, all of that. And thankfully now there's so many designers in my team that, are much better than me. But so having to be a father made me invest a lot more in significant decisions and significant work, not just important work, not just busy work, but significant work, which is work that prevents you from doing more work later down the line. So, and it's something that I was talking about on a Twitter space yesterday, where it's like, you can either, I'll give you an example. To design a logo the way that I want, I need it to be designed at workspace level design, right? I could do it myself, right? Which is level 4. I could sit with the person who would do the design, and do it with them, which is level 3. I could hold a masterclass for my entire team to train them on how to do this, which is level 2. Or I can do a significant work, which is record a masterclass and myself doing the work, so that no matter what, for the next 100 years, somebody who comes in can just watch that and do that, which solves so many problems down the line, right? So very often we stop at level 4 and level 3. And therefore, we have to keep doing it every single time, right? But if you take your time because you don't have time because you're taking care of a baby, I'm just going to record this Loom video and just, do this. So it removed me from the company, and I came in on a coaching basis, almost entirely. I learned about OKRs. I learned about so holding people, giving people very simple goals, holding them accountable to it, and coaching them on that basis. And all you do is support with significant things, right? Teaching in recorded videos, doing the research, designing the business model, removing plugs, so fatherhood really, really activated that side of me because I don't have time. As an entrepreneur, I think I work less than 2 hours a day.
Good for you.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, I still work.
I thought you meant you worked 2 hours at 2.
No. On my business.
Oh,
on my business.
I thought you meant
no. On my business, I work about 2 hours a day. Yeah. No,
teach me the way.
No. It's tough. It's really tough because
it's it's never ending.
It's never ending. Yeah. But I mean, my son is a full-time job. Like my wife and I work from home, and Charlie, the boy, he's beating us up, like, because we just moved to London, right? And we've lived in Accra. I mean, my hire housekeeper. We had a nanny.
It takes the pressure off.
Honestly, you have your mother-in-law, you have your mother. There's so much support, right? And you come to this Western world, and already the house is like 3 times smaller than where you live. So you can't crawl that far. So you always have, calls and this thing in your meetings, right? Because my son is always around, right? So we have to tag team. We have a schedule. You have him for these hours. I'm doing this, and it's been good as well because I'm cooking more. I'm more involved in the house. I feel closer to my son because when we had a nanny, you only hang with him around bedtime, and then you're the one putting him to bed, so those are some of the things. When we got a nanny much later because we realized, Charlie, we're just not doing well.
Yeah.
So it really improved my entrepreneurship journey, to do more significant work, to focus on coaching. And then because of that also, I don't sweat the small stuff. I become very analytical of data. So analytical of data.
Interesting.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Because you have 5 seconds if you're on, because my son now, he's 13 months old, but wants to type on the computer because his mom and dad are always typing on the computer every day. So if he's with you, he runs to you to come and type on your computer, right? Which ends up, sometimes locking your screen or whatever. So when I have, 30 minutes, right, I'm not going to check on clients' emails. I'm not like, I don't like, those are things that like, I'm at this point, my team is mature enough to be able to handle that. I only come in if there's something else. I don't talk to clients, and which is something I want to do better now, because I don't want to talk to clients. I want to coach my clients. So that is, I don't want to deal with them in the working capacity, but in the support capacity. So that's been very helpful as well, because, so that's number one. So now my ability to so we have a tracker. The whole company exists within something we call an OKR scoreboard. So I can see all the behavior, all the patterns, how we're progressing, how we're tracking towards our goals, our velocity, all those things. You learn all those things, from that, so that in 30 minutes, when you scan through those documents, you can see the issues in the organization quickly. There needs to be a skill training here. We need to hire a consultant for this. We need to change this technology. We need to so Fatherhood has actually helped me improve that, in relation to that. But also on the other side,
you're not sweating the small stuff.
You stop sweating the small stuff. Like, our brand, for a branding company, and that has been in existence for 9 years. I have a strong brand. We have a strong brand, but I feel like we could have been a global brand at this time if I had been doing the right things, right?
Okay.
But even as at now, I understand that it's still not the time. 9 years in, this is not the time to blow up. It's still because I'm if you get 1,000, because we tell people that technically the way our platform and technology is built, we can take on up to about 100 projects a day, which is miles better than, lots of other organizations, right? But I always say that, what if that moves from 100 to 1,000? We're not ready. Do you get what I mean? And you have to just accept it. You have to.
It's a good place to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. We're not ready for that kind of pressure. Let's, Also, so there's relaxing, but we know that.
No, don't be relaxing.
Yeah, but do what you need to do to be able to get there. But also, there's a time and place for everything, and God knows the right time when we're going to do that. So Fatherhood has really helped me in that, to focus on significant things, not to sweat the small stuff, to be very efficient with my time, to also be real. And show up saying, my son is on my lap. I'm sorry, I know this is a pitch meeting or this thing, but my son is on my lap.
We'll be all okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. If you can't take me as I am now, I'm sorry, I don't think we can work together, things like that. So, or in the middle of a meeting, he will throw something, and then I literally just have to, guys, I'm sorry, Hetty, take over.
Yeah.
And then I leave. I just leave. And whatever happens in the call, whether we sign the deal or we don't sign the deal, I have to just trust that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, again, as I said, there's a constant battle of my priorities. So initially, you need to ask yourself if you're. I realize, Ty, I'm not letting you ask questions.
No, no. Perfect. If I need to ask, I'll don't worry.
Sorry. Obviously, I have a lot to say on the topic, and guys, I'm sorry.
That's what they're here for. That's what the guest fee is for.
So you have to ask yourself, where is your identity rooted, and where is your value rooted as a man or as a woman? It's a very dangerous thing if you don't know what that is, because you will get mad and you'll invest in things that you cannot explain because you don't know where your self-worth, self-identity, and your value is rooted in. And so for the longest time, my value was rooted in me as an entrepreneur and my ability to create wealth and be productive.
Is this still going back to that need for validation? Is it still creepy?
In a way, yes, it's creepy, yes, exactly, right? So the conversation about entrepreneurship versus fatherhood was not a conversation about entrepreneurship versus fatherhood. It was a conversation about my son versus myself.
Interesting.
Not my son versus my business.
This is interesting because, like I said, it's called research.
Yeah.
There was I don't remember if it was a podcast or a TV interview you did where you said, I am the work that I do, or I am my work.
Yes.
And I found that very interesting because now in today's society, people try and separate I'm not what I do.
Yes.
But you're like, I am my work. So if there's this conflict, it's not actually between my son and I.
Exactly. My son and my work. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's a whole thing. That's a good topic title. I am my work. Anyway. So so that was the conflict between my son and myself. And multiple cases, like I used to be so pissed off, like, as to why, like, I mean, for years I've been able to show up every morning energized. I always sleep 8 hours a day. I tried initially, I didn't sleep 8 hours, and then I started to sleep 8 hours consistently for about 4 years. Like, I do, no matter what it is, the world can be burning, I will get my 8 hours of sleep. And then I could not sleep 8 hours again, right? Like, after this boy was born. And, so I could not show up in the morning in the way that I usually would because I'm tired. And sometimes when you feel like you're not doing well as a dad as well, it really messes you up as well. Like, like, I can't believe I chose money over spending, but you have to give yourself a lot of grace because you are still figuring that out, right? And to be honest, he doesn't care. He just appreciates time together. Like, he's not gonna, like, later down the line, he's going to notice when you choose between him and other things.
Yeah.
But, in the infancy years, it's fine. Like, give yourself as much grace as you can because you're still figuring it out. Just leaning and optimizing towards being better. So I could not show up, the way that I would. I liked my relationship with my wife was very good and has always been very good. So that is also equivalent to sleep. It is the bedrock for which I am my best self. Because of this boy, my wife also she's not there. She's dealing with her own things, right? Do you know what I mean? So that other level of comfort and this thing, and then kids are expensive. That's another thing that, they are pricey.
They are pricey.
Also, just in case you're listening, like, I love my son. Like, I love him passionately.
Yeah.
Like, I don't just love him, but I like him. I think his personality is really cool. I think he's really, like, I just enjoy him so much, right? So people shouldn't think that I'm just complaining. Like, it's because of...
We have to give some kind of
context. Yeah. No,
like, this situation is actually hard and difficult to navigate. But actually, I really love my son.
I really love my son. Yeah. But anyway, so those are the things that, like, I could not show up the way I'm used to. I had very little time to do the work that I enjoyed. I in some cases he would actually destroy work, like, where it's like you're in your groove and then he would wake up from a nap and would be, or like he would toss something or pour something on like some files that you have on the table, like, so those things all happened. But I started to do work on from a Christian perspective, actually, just understanding what God really expected of us as a father and as a husband, and reading about loving your wife as Jesus loved the church, and like all those things. And that is where the real transformation of what my identity was really shifted, in terms of my identity is not even so you move your identity from your business and your work as an entrepreneur to moving that to your identity as yourself, then moving that into your identity in terms of your duties, which are your, for me, it's being a husband and being a dad, to rooting your identity in God and Christ. And when you're able to do that transition, it becomes so much easier because everything comes from serving according to what God has instructed you to do. You get it? Because sometimes frustration and anxiety comes from the uncertainty of if you're making the right decision or if you're prioritizing the same thing from yourself, from your perspective. But when it has been given to you, like, clearly, there's some safety in those hard guardrails that this is what you're supposed to do. You can innovate and figure it out, but this is what it is. So then in that work, my identity rooted from, being a business person to being a father and being a husband, but then to being a godly man with godly headship. I don't think I'm there yet. Let me not lie. But now that is the work, and it therefore is making it easier for me to not sacrifice, but serve 2/3 of my day. And then I was now able to realign my work in entrepreneurship to serve my job as a father and my husband, and to serve my job as a godly man. So that's kind of been that journey altogether.
I want to ask a question about that last part. I think sometimes it's like when people talk about like a growth mindset. I think I was thinking about this the other day. It's not a developed thought yet, but maybe as it develops, I'll I'll share. But I was thinking, oh no, I've lost it. Why? It had to do with entrepreneurship and faith. Oh, I was like, healed people have a certain language that they speak that unhealed people might not be able to understand.
Okay, unpack, please.
So I feel like the reason why I say this, not to go off into a tangent, is because when I'm not asking you to like go into like rooted identity and stuff like that. I feel like those things are kind of individual. But I think that sometimes there's a time out here like self-compassion and self-love and self-care and, your healing journey. And they sound great and amazing. And the truth is they're true. But going on the journey myself is like everything that you were saying then, all your language about self-compassion and self-love, I understand that in an abstract sense. I just don't know how it applies to my life.
Exactly.
But I didn't have to, because sometimes I feel like maybe someone can listen to what you're saying and feel like, okay, I'm really feeling, this is giving me more confidence as a dad. And if they are Christian as well, they're probably thinking, okay, now I should be more focused. I should be trying to do this. Sometimes I don't feel like I had to chase those things. I think it's kind of like if you're walking down the street and you turn left and you go, you don't know that you don't know what you're going to see on that path. You just turned, but you didn't realize you were going to, go through this journey. So in that being authentic in terms of your identity, being a husband and having that guiding principle, were these very conscious things, or were they, are there things that on the journey you're like, oh, unconsciously, subconsciously, I'm actually changing?
Yeah. It's both.
Right, that was long-winded.
No, it's perfectly clear. It's both. Where I hold myself to a standard of trying to be, I don't want to even say the best version of myself, but the best resource to serve the people around me as much as I can, and serve in all sorts. And I hold myself to a very, 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 very high standard in relation to that. But also, I think I'm one of the dumbest people you would find where like I can be walking a path and I don't notice, like, like my brain doesn't even process sarcasm. So you could be sarcastic right now and I'd believe you the first time. So if you get what I'm not joking. So just to say, anybody listen to this podcast, you're fine. Like, in the sense of like, but just to say, so they were conscious things, but also unconscious. But I just want to illustrate the path in relation to identity and according to what I went through. I grew up with strict guardrails of what my identity should be. That was under my father. I rebelled to create my own identity in, as a contrast to the identity my father wanted me to have, right? Then I discovered that path in rebellion in itself was too far on the other side, right? And therefore I needed to seek some balance and root my identity in something more than myself, which then leads you to something called surrender, right? So where you surrender yourself, people who are on the self-love journey and self-care and all of that stuff are generally on they're walking the path, but they haven't yet arrived. That's what I would say, because you haven't finished. People end at the self-care and self-love, right? In response to a rebellion of a life before that did not prioritize them. So the fact that it is in response to that makes you think it is what it should be, but it is just what you needed to get out of that bit. But there's an elevated next step where you go back into the guardrails, but then of something much larger than yourself, which is, for me, my Christian faith. You get what I mean? So, because there is so much freedom in submission, and I say this especially for the women, the Christian women on this podcast.
Yeah, address them. They'll address you.
Yeah. No. But there is and I say this as a man because, and previously I used to think that, I think, was it Paul in the Bible was talking a lot about, when he was talking about a man must love his wife as Jesus loved the church. And then a woman must submit to their husband. And most men weaponize the second part, which is women must submit. And because of that,
submit to each other. But somehow we cut out that first bit.
Oh, yeah. But let's just use it in the traditional context, right? Where like people have weaponized that, right? Ignoring the fact that, as you probably have said, that the first one is heavier and requires a lot more than the submission. Because what did Christ do for the church? He died. And dying, it doesn't necessarily mean, killing yourself, but dying means dying to yourself. And dying to yourself is it's so heavy, where you die to the things you want, the things that you need because of your family. You give up your freedoms, in relation to that. And it is usually only when a man is able to do that, that a woman finds peace in submitting to him, because it's the perfect balance. If you get it right.
So, before the Christ loves the church,
Yeah.
because it gives instruction for both men and women.
Yes,
Before that, it says submit to one another.
Yes.
And then it says as Christ of the church.
Yes.
And then other parts is it's working. But, I find that interesting, because in that dying to self, that is some form of surrender to them as well. So that mission to one another kind of comes
to, exactly.
I had a friend tell me one time, she was like, I think we submit in our lives to different people in different contexts more so than we realize. She was like, you could be submitting your faith to the pilot of a plane, and you have surrendered your trust to him. That
you don't even notice.
And get in. But she was like, there's so many instances in your life that you submit and surrender bits of yourself. But I just find it interesting as you said that now, because when people say, as Christ of the church, again, another thing that can be taken so abstractly. But I feel like you've added layers to my thinking on that, in the sense of, if you do it in the right way, there is that, it's submission in and of itself.
Yeah, it moves towards the perfect way that God designed it, right? Where it's like nobody is self-seeking. So, and if you notice, they are both, technically, if you think about it, it's very similar, right? Like, as you said, like to submit to each other, right? It's very similar what a man should do and what a woman should do. But there's a heavier charge on the man in terms of he must go lower. You get it? Because he's also instructed to wash his wife with the water of the word. Like, there's a number of things that he's supposed to do.
Like servitude.
Exactly. It's he must be the lowest person in, as Jesus was.
Some African men will be turning in their seats, right?
Exactly.
Like,
you know what I mean? He must. It's a whole thing. I mean, I think we need a totally different podcast.
We need that. Well, I might be too chaotic.
No, because I mean, like, there's things like, how do you still lead the family? Like, so for example, like me becoming a husband and a dad, I know I'm the head of my household, right? A man is the head of his wife. A lot of people will challenge that, but that is the case. But what does that mean if he's the servant? He is lower in the family dynamic than, do you get what I mean? Like,
interesting juxtaposition, because it's kind of like there's this worship song called Servant King, whereas it's putting two things that are in opposition together. It's a servant and Jesus is a servant, but he's also a king.
Exactly. It's a very interesting one. Yeah. And I just wanted to end on that point where it's like, even when you are serving, you still have to lead. So I was having a chat with my friend where we have very strong wives, very intelligent wives as well. So usually their proposals are much better than what you will come up with, right? But the fact that she has provided the right direction doesn't mean you shouldn't lead in that situation. So you take that in humility that she is right, and then you say, on that basis, we as a family are going to. So you still lead in that. Like, so you don't hand it over to her because she's made the decision. We're just going to follow what she says. Do you know what I mean? So there's that in terms of the leadership, and then there's a lot of things to unpack there. But anyway,
I feel like this needs its own conversation.
It needs its own conversation. Let's go back.
It needs its own conversation. Oh, well, even if we want to do it today, I feel like we need multiple kind of
what perspectives on that?
Not too many cooks might spoil the broth on that kind of conversation. But I like to add layers to the conversation, and then whatever anyone wants to take from there, you can take. Whatever you want to leave. But no, I like that segue.
So yeah. Anyway, I mean, so it's just going back to the conversation about self, and then relating that to entrepreneurship, where you recognize that. So from guardrails to rebellion, to prioritizing yourself, to dying to yourself and serving to something larger. It's a very similar thing in relation to fatherhood, because the funny thing is that, especially since I'm raising a son, his independence is going to come very quickly, and you ask yourself, like, so what did you do all of this for, right?
Yeah.
But fundamentally, you're not supposed to benefit from all the labor that, like, the benefit is in the fact that another human is generally thriving independently.
Yeah.
So yeah, and if you draw a parallel to entrepreneurship as well, you're raising a baby that technically should be independent at a specific time, right? Like, that is the most beautiful business, a business that you can exit. I mean, you can do it till the day you die, but then, like, a business you can exit and still continues to make impacts in the world. So, like, somebody asked me, would I ever sell my shares in Workspace? And I was like, yeah, sure. Because at a particular point, I want to really prioritize my family and prioritize impact work. And I think at a certain level of success where you are doing hundreds of millions of dollars, you are legally required to do certain things that will not prioritize. You get it. And I think I'd rather just hand that over to somebody else who is in that stage of their lives. And then so that's just something to think about in terms of your entrepreneurial journey, that you are raising a baby. There can be guardrails that are set. You will have to break free from those guardrails or learn from mentors and accelerate that process. But it all comes to a point where you serve yourself in that, which is healthy at a particular point. Yeah. But then you have to evolve towards the next stage of just surrendering and serving others.
I have a question. So there are going to be guys listening to this who they're not even married, and then they may not have kids.
Yeah.
And what is your... Because when you think about work and raising a child, before, when you get married and you start family planning, there is what you think it's going to be like, and what you think your capacity, because you're only going to think from the point at which you are currently at. Now you're going to think, this is my capacity, this is what it's going to be like. And then now doing it, are there some fears that you had that looking back, you're like, if only I just known that actually this would be this has been more beneficial for me in a way that the fear did not allow me to see before?
Wow. I was very scared that I was going to be a terrible father, because I took fatherhood too personally.
Because of your relationship with
my dad, right? So my dad he's still alive. So he is an amazing father. I could not recognize that at the time he was raising us. But he's also an anxious personality. And so in his commitment to raising good children, there were things that, he didn't do too well, right? In relation to, there were things that he could have said softer. There were those things.
Just meeting your needs as a child.
Exactly,
I understand.
But now that I'm a father, I totally get it. And I totally and so I was always afraid that I would just be a terrible father, and a terrible father in the way that, because I'm trying to be a good father, I would not be a good father.
The pendulum too far.
Exactly, right. So that was something, and I was like, how do I know when I'm gonna have the balance? And so that was one thing. The second thing, in terms of getting married, is people are scared to give up their freedom. Very scared.
People or men?
Men. Men are scared. That is the one thing that is preventing, and that's what most people don't understand about. Men are a bit childish in general, right? As well. So I'm just saying, so they're not able to articulate it in that way. But basically what they're negotiating when they're committing to a woman long term in terms of marriage is that I'm giving up my freedom for you. And there's a lot of people that, as much as a man is attracted to, he doesn't feel she's worth that, right? Which is stupid, because in the sense of it is like, who are you to decide? You yourself, you don't like. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of things that men don't know, right? Yeah. But I'm just saying that that's generally what's happening. So I was very scared about that, right? I wanted to maintain my individuality, and I wanted to, so there were certain things that were non-negotiable. For example, my wife is we started off this marriage saying she never said this out loud, but then we had an unspoken rule that you can not really travel. You shouldn't you shouldn't want to travel on your own. If you had to, then it's fine. Yeah. But then if you are taking a conscious decision to travel on your own, you are literally leaving. Yeah. Me
travel
behind.
is a big thing with couples.
It is.
Yeah. I've realized.
It is. And so I mean, I didn't know this even, but like going in, I was also like, yeah, I need to be able to take 1 or 2 personal trips
myself.
every year. You know,
I feel like when I met you, you were like, I want to take a one personal trip.
One personal trip a year. I still do, but it doesn't come from the same place, right? Like, you know, because I just feel like with family, sometimes you don't always hear your thoughts, you know, so sometimes I want to just be able to go and fill that cup and then come back and, you know, so like, and, you know, she also holds a much different position now. She's like, Charlie, you cry, you're annoying in this house, you know, just go, like that kind of thing, right? So it's obviously, but I was really afraid about giving up my freedom in relation to that. And what else? What else? Yeah, I think boundaries as well, in terms, and for me specifically, being raised as a Ghanaian man, and sorry to my Ghanaian men, sorry to my Ghanaian men, but I always encourage women that do consider marrying a Ghanaian man in general, because I think they make some of the best men in the world. I don't know about Nigerian men too often, like, but no, I met some amazing, but then also, I feel like our culture, society doesn't necessarily raise us to have the right boundaries in relation to other women specifically. You are able to play very close to the edges,
but
you know.
I think you won't. You know, my sister says something. She's like, my sister says something. She goes, the Bible says, flee from sin. But to be honest, what we like to do is we want to toe the line as far as we can take it. That is still acceptable. But it's not. But even then, it gets murky.
But also, I mean, it's also a powerful place to be able to take yourself to, like, I'm gonna go to the bar and I'm not gonna drink. Like you feel there's a sense of like,
I'm going to, but it puts all the power in you.
Not,
and you are weak.
Exactly.
So it's like, don't bother doing that to yourself.
So I think one of my biggest fears, you know, as well, was that I would not necessarily be able to discern the right boundaries that I need to have with other women, you know, especially when I'm married, right? So that was also a big fear, because there's a part of me that also enjoyed not having having very loose boundaries, like, you know, like in your single life, it's just lit. You know, like, you know, to be able to have like a friend that, like, you know, low key could be somebody that you could be with, that, like, you know, it's nice, you know, you know what I mean? So I had a fear that, like, legitimately, like, this thing that, like, this charge and the vows that you're going to make on the altar, like, I would not be able to fulfill them, because, like, so those are some of the fears that, like, I really had. But just to offer some encouragement, all that doesn't really matter, to be honest, because... And I want to say this also specifically for single people who are picking partners, right?
When you say single people or single men, sorry to keep asking.
Single men.
Distinction.
Single men.
Sorry to keep asking for this.
Single men who are, when I say picking partners, not that the power is in your hands, but like who, you know,
you're choosing to be with.
Who you're choosing to be with. The first thing is that you're looking for a very small, you just need Play-Doh in the person that you're because the person you marry and the person that they are when you meet them before you get married are not the same person. Do you get what I mean? They change and transform. So you yourself will change and transform so much. You'll be shocked if you allow yourself to. So that's why I say the Play-Doh. So even though Play-Doh can be turned into anything, there still needs to be a basis, right? Of like certain things in terms of decency. Decency is the consideration of you as they make their decisions, the consideration of you as they make plans, you know, those things, you know, and then a commitment to a good marriage, you know, not necessarily a commitment to you, to a commitment to having a good marriage and playing the role that you need to. So if you're able to find somebody who has those two, the other stuff doesn't really matter, because
shared values.
Pardon? Shared values. Yeah. No, so that's what I mean. So and shared. But again, even your values change.
Yes.
But I'm just...
I know what... we know what we mean,
I agree.
You know what we mean, but...
I agree with you that, like, and shared values. Like, you know, both of you, if you're a Christian, both of you take authority from the Bible, like, you know, stuff like that, right? Like, those things are important. But, like, there's a lot of other things that people are thinking about, like, just a lot of other things that, yes, those are things that you come up with as a single person. So you're not equipped to even be making that list, if you get what I mean. Like, so, you want to find out.
You can only see so much from
So, from a particular vantage point, I want a woman that I'd always be sexually attracted to.
Was that okay?
No matter what she looks like, that whole thing dies and is reborn in a totally different way when you get married, where the attraction doesn't come from lust. It comes from love. And it's a very, so the things that we worry about are like,
transformation.
Because, I mean, it's nice to have like, oh my God, but that's not the basis of, wanting to get married, but that's usually the basis that people pick partners on.
Yeah.
So those fears, like, I can't remember the first fear that I mentioned, but like, the fear of being a father, again, you give yourself a lot of grace and there's a lot of teamwork. And if you just accept that, like, you are just willing to learn and commit at every point in time, at some point you figure it out. And you never really even figure it out because the child you were raising last year is now a totally different human being when they're age 5. You need a totally different parenting style to be able to, so it's more about if you're somebody who's good at gathering data, using that wisely, I think you should be fine. So that's what I'd say.
Being open to evolution of
self, exactly. Yeah, I would say.
I love that. Okay, before we go, I really enjoy this conversation, so I feel like we're gonna grab something to eat after, but I'm just going to keep asking questions. Cool. So one of the things that I didn't want to interrupt the flow of our conversation, but I want to go back to is what's your biggest takeaway from being a husband to a mother?
Wow. My biggest takeaway is that you don't have the full picture. The very fact that you're a man means you don't have the full picture. I didn't understand what hormones meant. Like it's like
one of those
it's like
things you hear about.
It's like no. I mean, even when you see it, like you don't really. I cannot. It's not a logical. A flow. Like it's not. Okay, this happens and this happens and therefore this, and because this happened yesterday in this particular way, tomorrow you can predict that.
I don't know.
So hormones
can predict
even. You get it. So that's one. The impact of childbirth. Sometimes being cut, not a cesarean, sometimes you have to there's things that happen to a woman that are unexplainable and you can appreciate it and you can try, but you never really had the full picture. And in that, I think you should just draw from that to really be humble and help and ask questions on that basis, I think because one thing I think I didn't do too well was that I used the yardstick of mothers I had seen in terms of my mom on my wife, right? Where it's like, I mean, she could, you can tough it out on this particular thing, or these people,
because our parents didn't show us, our mothers rather,
they didn't show that. Yes, exactly. So she was still doing everything. You didn't know she was struggling. Like, why are you like, every small thing you want a foot massage, like, that kind of thing, right? So you have those preconceived notions sometimes of what you think motherhood should be, and like, and it does influence your orientation towards your partner. So really just appreciate the fact that you don't and you will never have the full picture. And if you can be a humble person in that, I think there's a lot of beauty and glory that you'll be able to find with your partner and, and being a good husband. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sydney.
This has been
great. That.
This has been fantastic. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. I really like how our conversation went, and I'm sure that you've added many, many wonderful layers to people's thinking, especially about entrepreneurship and fatherhood and humility. I think the overarching message, well, there's a lot I'm getting from this. I'm going to unpack it mentally when I go home, but I think that realization of I can evolve as a human being, but through servitude, whether that's in my business, to my family, to myself, to my God, to my parents. Yeah. And I want to say thank you for being really open and vulnerable, even just about your relationship with your dad. I know we didn't go into that, but I think sometimes as African people, that's a difficult thing to even just say in passing, because there's a loyalty that you have to your family that you're like, you don't want to, thank you for for saying that.
Yeah.
I know it's not.
I appreciate it. I mean, this is something that I'm very committed to in terms of just giving as much as I can give in my time that I'm alive. But also this year I've learned that I'm going to shamelessly plug my businesses. So
I was just going to say, tell us.
Please, yeah. So if you are a founder, an entrepreneur, or a business leader, somebody who makes decisions in your company, go check out workspaceglobal.com and book a discovery call. Just learn about what we're doing. It does really help businesses accelerate, but also we're creating real impact in Africa. Every time you use us, someone somewhere who may not have access to a traditional job, is being able to earn ends meet remotely and reliably, right? So check Workspace Global out for your websites, your designs, your corporate profiles, whatever it is. We actually even build apps now as well. So if you want to build products as well, we do that really quickly. And then for Openspace, so Workspace, I'm looking for more clients. And then for Openspace, we're raising funding. We've been very humble about it. We've done it for 5 years and never asked anybody for money and never charged anyone. But unfortunately, with the way the economies of our worlds go and where we're trying to go, we need support. So I'm hoping that I can get some corporate patrons or some donors who will be like, listen, I just like what you're doing. Could keep having these conversations. Here's $2,000, to be able to support your volunteers. So I'm looking for people who can come in for Openspace. So openspaceglobal.org and then workspaceglobal.com. And then for me personally, I do coaching personally and professionally for very humble prices. So I'm very happy to support anyone who's looking for that.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Sydney. And I will link everything in the description on whatever audio platform you're listening to. Yeah. Everything will be in the description of the episode. So see you guys next time. And thank you, Sydney, for being here.
All right, Saya, this has been amazing.
Oh, thank you, friend.